All right, welcome back. This is going to be the final video for AP Environmental Science Unit 1, Introduction to Ecosystems. In this final video, we're actually going to go through three sections. We're going to talk about trophic levels, we're going to talk about energy flow and the 10% rule, quote 10% rule, and we'll talk about food chains and food webs. So to start, we'll look at how energy flows through ecosystem. Now, biomass is defined as the dry weight of all organic matter of a given trophic level in a food chain or a food web. And at each level, as you go up in the trophic level, you're going to lose the amount of biomass, the amount of energy available because of heat. Now, the pyramid of energy flow is the 10% rule. And the idea here is that only 10% of the energy can transfer from one trophic level to the next. So as you go up in a trophic level, you lose 90% of the energy at each of those levels. So we think of it as a pyramid. So in this example, I'm going to show you the producers being the bottom trophic level. Now we're going to pretend that they have 10,000 units. We'll call it calories for now. The producers are, if you take their biomass, 10,000 units. They release energy through heat, and we'll talk about this other section over here. But the energy that's lost is how much? 90% of the energy. What that means is that only 1,000 calories from that original 10,000 calories can now go to the next level, the primary consumers. The primary consumers being the consumers that eat the producers. So in this example, we're seeing phytoplankton being eaten by zooplankton. So if you had in biomass 10,000 available calories in the phytoplankton, you would only have 1,000 calories available in the zooplankton. This does not mean that the zooplankton are eating 10,000 calories. It means that they're only getting 1,000 calories from the original 10,000 calories available. The secondary consumers, or perch, a type of fish, would again have only 10% of the available energy to them, because we lose energy to heat and to this last column we'll talk about. And then you get to the final level, the highest trophic level. This could be humans eating perch, and this is going to be the tertiary consumers, and this is going to, again, be 10% of the available energy before. So the usable energy at each level in kilocalories, I just said calories, whatever, if the producers were producing 10,000 calories, of that 10,000 calories, only 10 would be available to the tertiary consumer, to the humans. That energy is lost through heat. That's a good old-fashioned law of thermodynamics. And a lot of that energy ends up going to decomposers as they decompose that decaying matter and release a huge amount of energy to heat again. So it's important for us to understand, if we move ourselves up one level or two levels in the trophic level, we're going to have more available energy to us. And this is why it's important to understand that we would be able to get more energy from producers. If we ate more plants, we would have more energy available to us with less amount of input. We don't need to feed and water and care for animals, for instance. So for instance, if we're trying to get 10 kilocalories from, say, some meat, some type of animal, we have to produce enough energy, we have to take care of enough plant life to get a huge amount of energy, and we end up getting, for like cows, for instance, we are the secondary consumers in cows with beef. We're only getting 100 of the original 10,000 calories that we were able to actually have produced by the producers. So it's important, as we change what level we are in our trophic levels, we are going to change the amount of energy required to get us energy. Now, when we talk about food chains are broken down into specific parts, right? The producers, the consumers, the decomposers, the detrivores. That's it. Now, there's very little waste for the most part, there's a lot of good cycling happening. The nutrients in nature are not wasted. They get used by all these different things. Decomposers are consumers that release nutrients. Detrivores feed on dead bodies of other organisms. So it's important to know the difference. A detrivore is like a vulture. A decomposer is like a fungus. Okay. Producers are typically plants. No, they are plants, and consumers are animals that eat producers or they eat other consumers. So when we talk about detrivores and decomposers, the detrivores are these animals that are eating the dying material, and then they turn that into nutrients. Decomposers are breaking that down even further in a much different way. They're not eating it as much as they are using the nutrients in a different way. So decomposers are usually, this is bacteria, mushrooms, but like a lot of decomposers for the most part are bacteria. Okay. Now, when we talk about the ecosystem and this process, it is another one of our cycles, right? Solar energy is how energy is introduced to the producers and the plants. They convert that energy into chemical energy. Now, some of the energy from those producers goes straight to the decomposers, but a lot of it is also released in heat. Then from the producers, consumers then eat the producers or other consumers. More energy is lost in heat, and then the consumers can be decomposed by decomposers. More energy is lost from heat. The decomposers break down those dying, decaying material into nutrients, like chemical nutrients, carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, and minerals. Those minerals can then be used by producers, but again, energy is lost from heat, or to heat. So each level, you're going to see a loss of energy, and there's going to be a 10% rule. So of the original producers, the chemicals that make it back to them are not going to be nearly as much as what they originally had in them as far as energy goes. So now there's a difference between a food chain and a food web. A food web is a model of all the interlocking patterns of a food chains that depicts the flow of energy and the nutrients in two or more food chains. Okay, so this would be just a food chain, right? The food chain shows the trophic level, the first trophic level, the second trophic level, the third trophic level, and the fourth trophic level. Solar energy starts, you get the producers, then you go to the primary consumers or the herbivores that eat the producers, then you go to the secondary consumers, these are carnivores that eat the primary consumers, and then you go to the tertiary consumers that eat the secondary consumers. These are usually the top carnivores, right? These are the top of the food chain. Now at each level, we lose energy to heat, obviously. At each level, some energy is lost to decomposers and detritus feeders. So it's important to see that this is a food chain. We're just looking at one going to the next. We're seeing, how did this guy get his energy from the sun? Well, it went through these processes. A food web is a little bit different because there are many food chains in a food web. And you can actually get an idea of where that energy came from and how many different paths it could have taken. Phytoplankton would be the producer, but phytoplankton can go to krill or to zooplankton. Zooplankton and krill can go to many different places, fish, squid. So this is a food web which shows all of the different possible paths that one could take. And this gives you an idea of, you can remove one of these and see a huge change in many other ones, because for instance, crab-eater seals will eat the krill. Now, if the crab-eater seal is removed, not only does it harm the killer whale that eats the seal, it also harms other species because the krill are able to thrive and grow unchecked, which they are then going to eat up more of the phytoplankton, which is going to harm the zooplankton, because now there's not going to be as much phytoplankton available to the zooplankton. So it's important to know that if you remove any of these species from a food web, you can have drastic changes to any other species, even if they're not directly connected on one food chain. So that is the end of our final video for our first unit for AP Environmental Science. I hope you enjoyed this, and make sure that if you need any questions, if you have any questions, email me, ask in class, rewatch the videos, and take notes.